Dapol have long been a major supplier of freight models for both OO gauge and N gauge modelers. In general, their models are well presented, reasonably priced and of good quality. Every now and again one of their models will stand out from the others, and the Silver Bullet ICAs are one example of that. It's time to take a closer look. Hi, thanks for joining today's review. So the first thing we're going to do is a brief unboxing of one of the latest of these ICA models from Dapol, and it's one of the latest versions that just became available earlier this year. We'll then do a close-up view of the model, followed by a running session, and then we'll get into our summary of the range and of its capabilities and get into our scoring and recommendations. Okay, let's get underway. Okay, so we're going to do the unboxing for the latest version of the ICA Wagons from Dapol. These just became available around the April timeframe, and they're a continuation of the series. Basically, I guess that Dapol would have had a series of them last year with the NACO branding on them. I like the weathered versions, and that's what I've purchased previously, and I'm adding this to the collection of weathered versions that I have. So we're going to take this out of the box and take a quick look at the model just from a... So the packaging actually isn't that impressive. It feels a little bit cheap, but the wagon itself is far from that. So let's take a look. So a little bit of detailing kit. This is the typical one. That's the same as on the previous versions. That's a pretty small kit. There's a lot of detail on the model itself. So we're going to just take a look at this now. Let's get rid of the sellotape here. Let's get it on this side as well. Okay. So let's take them out. So I really do like these wagons. I think Dapol have done a great job on them, and I think I prefer the weathered versions to the full silver versions, the unweathered silver versions. Though I do like the silver versions as well. There's a lot of great detail, and you can probably see the detail a little bit, maybe a little bit clearer. But I do like these. I think these are very representative, and it's more what you're going to see on the tracks. So it's really a combination of, you know, a lot of nice detail, a lot of separately fitted parts. The railings there's metal parts that have been added to this. A lot of detail on the kind of board there. A lot of underbody detail again with metal wiring, for example. Overall, you know, really nice wagon. And then you've got the weathering effect as well, which I think is pretty good. You know, people have different views on factory weathering. I kind of like it because I think it gives you a level of uniformity, and it saves you having to take out your spray gun, etc., and starting to and doing it, and it gives I suppose if you do ultimately resell the wagons, they hold their value because you've got this consistency in terms of the weathering. Though you can always augment the weathering as well, and that's something that I think some people like to do sometimes. But this is really, you know, some fantastic detail on this model, and we will do a close-up view and a 360 view, just looking at this metal on the top here, the railings. I mean, this is the kind of detail, I suppose, that is not typical on wagons like this. So really good. So we'll say we'll take a close-up look straight after this, but this is in keeping with all the previous series of these wagons that I've seen and of the wagons I have. So it's absolutely representative of the previous NACO branded wagons. And I think the running performance is probably similar as well, so we'll take a look at that. So really a nice looking wagon. I think these ICA wagons from Dapol, I think, are pretty outstanding actually as models. And I think, I have a preference for the weathered versions. I think the silver versions are pretty spectacular as well, and they have the same good running performance and the same level of detail. But I just prefer the weathered version. So this looks really good out of the box. We'll take a close-up look at it now, and then we'll get to the next part of the review. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get into a close-up view of one of the wagons, and you can see all that handrail detail on the left hand side there, and a lot of that is separately fitted metal parts. There's nice bogies there, the branding labels very well brought out there, and you can see that board and all the writing on the board there, all the detail that's captured. You can see some of the underbody detail there as well, the ladder work, and again that metal framework at the top there, that's all separately fitted metal parts, and you've got that extra splatter effect from a kind of weathering perspective coming down there. Again, the nice kind of weathering right across the body, and again, some people don't like the factory fitted weathering, the factory applied weathering. I think it does work very well here, and you can overlay your own weathering if you wish to as well. And again, some nice bogey detail and another nice little separately fitted handrail at the end. Again, looking from the top down at this model, and again you can see that detail that's on the very top there, and which is very impressive. Dapol seem to like to add a lot of metal, separately added metal pieces of detail to their models, and this is a really good example of that. So I think a very authentic looking model. If you look at these are very representative of what you'll actually see of the silver bullets that you'll see on the main line. I don't think I've ever seen a silver bullet, if you know what I mean. Though the silver wagons have the exact same detail, they have the same running performance. They are spectacular wagons in themselves. I just have a preference for these because they're more representative of what you'll see on a real rail line. Now, I've added in the previous model here, the NACO version, and you can probably see the slightly different colouring on the two, and again, that's no harm. Overall, they're the same wagon. They actually have the same sort of running performance, they're the same detail applied, etc. So they're identical wagons fundamentally, apart from the branding. Slightly different shade there, and I suppose that's not surprising and not an issue. There's absolutely no harm having different shades of these, which is more representative of the mix and match you'll see on a real rail line. Okay, so we're going to get into a running session now. This running session is actually just with the NACO wagons, and I've tested out the latest wagons, and they are actually identical. These are probably the smoothest running wagons I've seen, and so this has actually got a rake of 6 of the NACO wagons that you saw there, to give you an idea of those. And as I said, they're absolutely representative, and it's the same running performance for the silver versions as it is for the weathered versions. There's no compromise. Sometimes with weathered wagons, you do get some overspray on, maybe if they were spray painted for the weathering, and that can actually affect the wheels, so you get a bit of that. There's nothing like that here, so these are super smooth. So this straight air has actually got a 1 degree gradient on it, and these wagons will actually roll from one end of the layout to the other freely. That's how smooth they are. They are extremely smooth, and I'm pulling them here with the Hornby locomotive, which wouldn't be the most powerful in the world, but not a problem because these wagons have such little resistance from a drag perspective. They are super smooth. There's no wobbling, there's no issues on any of the point work. They're just the smoothest wagons you're going to see, and it's an absolute joy. And the bigger the rake, the better, because they're so smooth, and they don't put a load on your locomotive. They're not going to. So you don't need a class 60 or something or class 66 to be pulling these. A Bachmann class 66 or a Hatton 66. These will be fine with your Hornby locomotives. And fine at speed as well. So they get up to, I think this goes up to a prototypical 70-75 miles an hour in this particular running session here. But that's nothing to these wagons. These wagons could easily go over a prototypical 100-120 miles an hour. They're as good as Mark III coaches. That's maybe how it might describe their running performance. They're in terms of being able to run at speed, they are the equivalent of say, a Mark III coach from Hornby. Super smooth, low resistance, can run very large rakes with no problems at all, and they also look extremely good and extremely realistic on the track. I mean, these really are representative. You can always choose to add some additional weathering if you wish to, but I think at least these wagons do look the real deal, and they run like the real deal as well. All credit to Dapol, and they don't break the bank price-wise either. We'll take a look at that later on. They are very reasonable. So overall, a fantastic running session with these wagons. They are top-notch, and as I said, the silver versions of these are absolutely equivalent. So you get the same detail, you get the same running performance on the silver versions as we've just seen here. So from that perspective, it just comes down to your own personal taste and what you would like to be running on your layout. Okay, let's get on to the next part of the review. Okay, so now we're going to get into the summary. So we've been looking at the Dapol Silver Bullet ICA range for 2021 for the 00 gauge. There's actually 4 new models in the range for this year. 3 of them are weathered and 1 of them is unweathered, and that's probably representative of sales, I guess, that they're getting much more demand for the weathered versions. And these all come with the new branding. They're the same essentially as the previous versions of these wagons. So if you're familiar with the last year's versions, they come with a very highly detailed body and chassis. A lot of extra metal parts added for things like grills, handrails, ladders, etc. And it's a very nicely applied livery with the weathered finish. They do come with tension lock couplers pre-fitted, and the unboxed weight is 83 grams. So it's quite a light coach, and it probably seems more stable on the track. For a coach like that, you might say, well, that's not going to run maybe too well. But these do run really smoothly, and the smaller weight, I wouldn't say, is an issue for these particular wagons. The retail and selling price does vary quite a bit from different channels, and it is different for the weathered and unweathered. So you see the difference there. You'll pick up the unweathered version anywhere between 30.50 to 35.95, which is the RRP. The weathered version will set you back a bit more. It varies between 33.95 and 39.95. So at about a £4 premium for the weathered version. So that's not a bad price, I think, for a wagon like this, and typically you will find them towards the lower end of those scales. So here we get into the scoring. So the running performance on these wagons is a 5-star. It is as good as any other wagon that I have. So I would find it, and I'd probably find it hard to figure another wagon that actually has better running performance than these. Ultra smooth, absolutely no problems. Can run very large rakes. Look very good on the track. No wobbling, no moving around, no derailment. They're just so smooth. So 5-star. I think appearance and detail, I'm giving a 5-star as well. And I think there's a lot of detail, as you saw, a lot of separately added metal parts. In particular, Dapol seem to love doing their metal handrails, metal ladders, etc. Metal gratings. So, really tremendous detail. And all the kind of lettering work and labeling and all the other smaller parts, really, really, really good. So a 5-star for that as well. These are top-notch wagons from a detail perspective. Extras and variants, there's 4 available this year, so they're the different variants. It's a very small detailing kit, so most of the detail is on the model, and that tends to be the way for a lot of the Dapol products. So 4-star there, I think, is fine. Build quality and packaging. The main issue here is the packaging. I think the packaging is a little bit on the cheap side. That said, I haven't had any problems with any detail parts falling off or any issues with all the models of these I've had, and I've probably had maybe 10 to 12 have gone through my hands over the last 12 months of these particular wagons, and I haven't had a problem with any one of them, despite the packaging being a little bit, I would say, on the cheap side. Because the model is light, it doesn't put as big a stress on the packaging, and I guess so you get away with a slightly cheaper package. Still, I probably would have liked to see the packaging just a little bit better than it is. Price value, 4.5-star. I think if you're getting it at those prices, paying somewhere between £34-35 for the weathered version, and maybe £31-32 for the unweathered version, I think that's a pretty good price for this caliber of wagon, given the detail and given the performance. So I think 4.5-star. Overall, I'm giving a 5-star. I think these are top-notch wagons. I think they're probably some of the best wagons I have, without a doubt. And they're not incredibly expensive. There has been price inflation with wagons. You'll have seen that with, say, some of the latest Hellion wagons that are coming out, etc. I just noticed that the wagons have gone up in price, and you'll see that. Whereas I think these are still at a good price. So overall, they ultra smooth running wagons, a joy to run on your layout, fantastic detail, and they look really good. Reasonable price. I do prefer the weathered version. Some people may prefer the silver version. I do think the silver version is quite spectacular itself, and some of the detail actually stands out maybe a little bit more on the silver version, because you can just see it. It's kind of weathered out on the weathered version, and they both run impeccably. So that really comes down to personal taste. So no hesitation in making these a highly recommended rating for any contemporary modeller looking for this type of wagon. I don't think you're going to find anything better anywhere else. These are 5 stars and they're well worth it, and they're probably a must-own if this is something you're interested in, contemporary freight modelling with the latest locomotives. These are probably a must-own for you. Okay, great wagon. Really enjoyed going through this particular review because they're just so good. Please drop comments on your own experience if you have these wagons. Which ones do you prefer? Do you prefer the weathered or the silver version? How have you found them out of the box? I had no issues with them. Did anybody experience some problems with these? Any quality issues, etc.? I just haven't experienced them over the 2-3 years that I've had these wagons or been purchasing them. So thanks for joining today's review. We'll hopefully see you on the next one, and in the meantime, happy modelling.